Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk About Houses. I'm Todd.
I'm Juana.
Okay, today we're going to talk about real estate investors who are purchasing more U.S. homes as high prices lock out would-be buyers. Now, Juana, what's interesting about this is there's a ton of data about the actual numbers of like percentages of homes that are investor-owned and all that. We're going to go through all the data and talk about it.
Okay.
This is really what, and then we're going to talk about why this is happening. Like, why are so many real estate investors flooding into the market when there are people out there saying, "Oh, it's like the worst time you could ever buy a house."
All right.
Okay. All right. So we'll do this. We'll just go through the data. We'll talk about it as it comes up as we read it, and then I have some great charts to sort of show you where all this money is coming from because we found the money. Like it's like in Breaking Bad when they open up the storage unit, it's just a big thing of money. We found it.
There you go.
So, okay, here's the first quote from the article. Nearly 27% of all homes sold in the first 3 months of the year were bought by investors. The highest share in at least 5 years, according to a report by real estate data provider Batch Data. Between 2020 and 2023, the share of homes bought by investors averaged 18.5%.
Okay.
This is pretty big. One at 2020, 21, 22, we went through this thing where BlackRock and Invitation Homes and Homes for Rent, companies like this were buying like homes like crazy.
Right.
And why it was only 18.5%, but why all of a sudden are 27? Why do you think 27% of the home purchases investors?
Well, they're looking for a place to park money. We've had an environment of higher than usual both mortgage rates and inflation.
Okay.
And so they're looking for a place to park money. They think that that's a good place to put money where their money will grow. It's an asset class like any other. And so they're putting money in real estate.
Okay, but let's talk about this from like, what else could they do? They could put the money in a money market and get 4%.
Right.
What kind of return are they going to get on a house that they buy?
That's uncertain, but they're going to get a return, a layered return, if you will, right?
A layered return.
So they're going to get a return regarding rent, right?
Okay.
They're going to get depreciation, so they'll get tax incentives in that direction.
That's true.
And then they're going to also be able to get appreciation. So when they sell the property, the idea is that they're going to sell it for more than what they purchased it for. Depending on the tax environment at the point where they sell the property, they may be able to roll that investment into something else and have the money grow tax-free.
Okay, but what they're giving up is liquidity.
Right, but we give up liquidity anytime we invest our money. Some liquidity is for shorter term and some is for longer term, but that's the point of investing money. It's putting the money to work, so it's not readily available.
I think someone would say, but if I go put it in an E-Trade account and stick it in a bunch of funds, I can always sell it the next day. But then the risk is you sell it, if you need it, you take it at a loss. If it hasn't gone up, and then if it has gone up, you have to pay taxes. And if it's under a certain amount of time, it's income. It's not capital gains.
Right. Well, the whole time that your money is invested, it is not liquid.
Okay.
So whether it's in E-Trade or anything else,
Yeah.
right? You don't get the liquidity out until you sell the investment.
Those are technically called semi-liquid.
Yes.
That's what. Okay. All right. Here's the next quote from the article. This I thought was pretty interesting. Even so, investor-owned homes account for roughly 20% of the nation's 86 million single-family homes, the firm said. Of those, mom-and-pop investors, or those who own between 1 and 5 homes, account for 85% of all investor-owned properties. So 85% of properties are owned by
you and me.
us, right?
Mm-hmm.
While those between 6 and 10 properties are another 5%. We've got more data on this. Something else that's interesting about this stat that's here about 86 million single-family homes. This does not include condos.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually like 140 million housing units in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So 86 million single-family homes. Then you have a ton of condos. But this is interesting. This is like contrary to like if you ask the average person, like based on what you've seen on the news, like what percentage of homes like average people own and corporations, they would probably be like, oh, it's probably 50-50, right?
Well, they're certainly going to think that it's more than the actual amount because you and I owning homes, whether it's the homes that we live in or the couple rentals that we have, we don't make the news. What makes the news are the more exciting investors, right? The ones that own a vaster number than most of us own. Even though as a percentage of the investment properties they actually own a relatively small percentage, they're certainly much more interesting to talk about in the media.
This is very interesting. This is from the article. Institutional investors that own 1,000 or more homes account for only 2.2% of all investor-owned homes.
Mm-hmm.
So remember, only 20% of all homes, single-family homes, are owned by investors, and only 2.2% of investor-owned homes. So that means that 0.4% of all homes are owned by institutional investors.
So the BlackRocks of the world, yes.
Yep, they own 0.4% of all homes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Not very exciting.
Not very exciting. BlackRock and Invitation Homes are not the reason you didn't get a home in 2021, right?
Correct.
It was
different. Something
it was
else.
somebody 2 doors down from you that wanted to buy another rental house, or somebody else who just was willing to bite the bullet and do it, raise the price, $500. Just price of people walking around that bought a home in 2021 and go, I can't believe I had to go 10,000 over list price, looking and they've got a 2.7% interest rate. Now they're like, they could never buy it. They probably may not even be able to afford the house. The house would be, 100,000, 200,000 more, and it would be, interest rate would be triple what it was back then.
Well, I think that most people who own homes that have had them for more than a few years would have a difficult time purchasing their own home right now at market value.
Okay, here's a slide we want to show about the amount of money that's sitting in money market funds. So this is a record. This is the most money ever. It's 7.4 trillion. There's almost $2 trillion a year that is the amount of all residential real estate that transacts every year.
Okay.
There's enough money just in money markets almost for the next 4 years to buy all the houses that come on the market without anybody having to get a loan.
Right.
So people are like, where, like all this cash, like where is all this cash? Well, there are people that have money in money markets. Now, some of these are funds that have money markets, but that's still like our money because we put it, like all of us collectively, we put it into a fund, and then the fund puts some of it into a money market. Some of it they buy stocks and things like that. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of money in money markets. This is the one that really got me. Household checkable deposits and currency. Now this is households. Mm-hmm. This means that the people, not BlackRock, they can go down to the bank, right, with their little bank book and open up and take it in and say, I want to take out $400,000 because I want to buy a house. There is $4.46 trillion. What's really crazy is from this goes back to 1987. Mm-hmm. From 1987 until basically about 2014, there was less than $1 trillion. Mm-hmm. And even in 2020, there was less than $1 trillion. And we went from under $1 trillion to over $4 trillion in household checkable deposits in currency, which is like cash people would have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? So, Wanda, do you think some of these people do you think some of this money could end up in real estate if, say, home prices did actually pull back and start declining?
Absolutely. I mean, I know lots of people, us included, that would always be willing to purchase something for the right price.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. The bottom line is this: interest rates are not historically high. They're historically high if your version of history is the last 8 years.
Right.
If you go back into the 80s, interest rates are a third. They've actually down quite a bit. We almost hit 8% at one point. 2023, I think we're down to.
It's about
2022. 2022 is when it peaked. I think we're down to 6.5 or so is the median rate on a Freddie Mac. They pull all the things. So I think it was 6.5 for a 30-year, and a 15-year was like 5.6, 5.7%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this takes us back to like the question we asked at the very beginning. Why are people still buying houses when, you know, the crash bros all say that, you know, why don't buy, wait? Because if home prices fall 20%, which is not going to happen, maybe in one market out of 400 that'll happen. But you're now not going to get a house because the investors are going to come in and outbid you, more than likely, because there's a lot of people with cash. So what's your take? Where are we? Does this get better as interest rates fall, do you think, or what? Or because we're at a point where investors are buying less house. We're buying less houses when interest rates were at 2.5%. Investors were buying less houses when mortgage rates were at 7.5%. But now that they're 6.5%, more investors are buying than regular people.
Well, I think the purchases have to do more with the product. And I say this a lot. I think there are more choices on the market. Okay. So investors have more choices of product to buy. Part of that increased choice is also people who maybe are more willing to be more negotiable in their price because, you know, they've had the property for a while, they've got quite a bit of equity, and whatever their life circumstance is, maybe they can they prize speed over maximizing the amount that they get for the house.
I'm going to put this chart back up so we can talk about this. When it says more homes available, this is the inventory chart for the whole U.S. Okay, about 1 million homes. This is measured by Federal Reserve. They get their data from Realtor. This is just stuff that listed in MLSs. You can see that we have the most number of properties available that we've really had probably for 5 years. But if you go back below that little bar, which was the COVID year, then and if you keep going back, we still have far less homes available than we had in 2019, 18, 17, 16. And nobody back then was saying the housing market was going to crash. And then not only that, it's bigger, like there's more homes, like we've been building homes for the last 5 years. So we should have a lot more homes than we had available for purchase in 2019, but we don't yet. And are we going back to that? This looks like we're going back to that, but we're going back to a normal market. What I think crash bros like to do is they'll just show you January 2022 or 21, and they'll just show you that, oh, it's just increasing like crazy. It's never been this high in the last 5 years.
Right.
All
right. So hopefully that was interesting for you. Please remember to subscribe, hit the notification bell, like the video, share the video. Leave us your real estate related comments. We love your comments, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.
Bye.